Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Russ.
And I'm Jeanelle Slade. Homes on Crest Drive beneath the Billings rims are beginning to crumble.
Neighbors say groundwater seeping out from the drainage ditch that sits above their homes is causing major damage and no one is taking responsibility.
The Billings Benchwater Association shut off the water flow on Friday to assess that area.
Q2's Samantha Sullivan is in the neighborhood tonight with more on the situation. Sammy?
Well, Russ and Jeanelle, Gary Davis, the board president of the Billings Benchwater Association, tells me this is not surprising. There have been seepage issues in this area for the last 70 years. But neighbors say it's more than just seepage, and it's destroying their homes and their sense of security. Bowing walls, foundation cracks, a house crumbling.
It's only a matter of time before the whole house comes down.
Dawn's parents live in this house on Crest Drive. They've been here for the last 13 years.
Like, this was supposed to be their forever home. This is where they were supposed to, live forever.
Dawn says it all started last year when they noticed standing water in their yard and the initial signs of foundation issues. When the water was turned on in May of this year, things got worse. Heather Baum rents the house next door.
The ditch was turned on in May, and a few days after it turned on, I could look out my window and see water flowing out from the side hill here.
In Heather's backyard, a PVC pipe burst. Crews set up a pump and cleared the water from her yard. Her landlord added an extra pipe to help move water out.
Yesterday, we calculated that you could fill a 5-gallon bucket in 6 seconds. So it was no small amount of water still flowing out of here prior to anything being done.
Heather says the water didn't stop until Billings Benchwater Association began maintenance on the ditch on Monday. So far, no one's taking blame for the issue. Now, back in 2003, a survey of the area showed it was at high risk for landslide. Yet a developer moved forward and the city approved the permits. Neighbors say no one warned them. Now, Davis with the Billings Benchwater Association did tell me today he believes these homes should have never been built due to the history of these issues in this area. But the association did hire a contractor and an engineer to come and assess the area. They say the hillside is secure. They will be installing a rubber-like sealant on the drainage ditch due to that seepage issues and plan to turn the water back on by Monday. Now, in the meantime, the two families we spoke with say they'll be moving out this summer. Russ and Jeanelle.
All right, Q2 Samantha Sullivan live from Crest Drive tonight. Thank you.
Well, headed into 2020, the Billings General and Public Safety Fund's budget will be short about $4 million. This means the city will have to dip into reserves to fund the police and fire departments next year.
So that means voters will be asked to decide what's next. Q2's Mitch Laggy is standing by now with an update from the city administrator. Mitch.
Russ and Jeanelle. Billings City Administrator Chris says that the city will have to dip into reserves to cover 2020, but the reserves won't last forever. Kukulski said that city staff are planning on a mill levy in 2020. This after the city council approved the 2020 budget last night. The council worked to cut about $2.1 million from the general and public safety funds before approving that budget. This still leaves that $4 million gap that the city will have to pay with money from reserves. This, however, is not sustainable moving forward. Kukulski would like the levy conversation to center around long-term solutions to public safety.
I think we want to have a conversation with our voters of solutions to problems long-term. So, how do we really improve the sense of safety and security in our downtown? How do we help deal with addiction? And the effects that methamphetamines and opioid or alcohol addiction is causing for our public service providers.
And the specifics on when the levy will be on the ballot and what exactly it will look like still remain to be seen. Russ and Jeanelle.
All right, thank you, Mitch.
Well, across Montana, home and business owners now know how much the state values their properties. New appraisal notices are out, and in many areas, values have gone up.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that your property taxes will increase this year by a comparable amount. MTN's chief political reporter Mike Dennison explains.
Every 2 years, the State Revenue Department reappraises your property for tax purposes. And this year in Montana's major cities and counties, those values often increased. For residential property in these areas, the average countywide increase ranged from about 7% in Yellowstone to a high of 23% in Gallatin County. Ravalli County was the next highest among the most populous counties at 12.3%, followed by Missoula at 12.1%, Flathead 11%, Lewis and Clark at 9.6%, and Cascade and Butte-Silverbow around 9%. The appraised value of businesses also increased on average in these counties, usually by a lesser amount, except in Missoula, where they went up almost 18%. City and county officials will tell you taxes they levy probably won't increase by the same amount. Under state law, local governments can increase their general fund budget by only half the rate of inflation.
So that means if your valuations are going up, then when the local government goes through the tax form, we're probably going to see a lot of mill levy reductions throughout the state of Montana.
Public school budgets, which usually account for at least half your property taxes, also have increases limited under state law. As Burton explained, that means the mills, which are a multiplier applied to your property's taxable value to calculate the actual taxes, should go down to offset increasing values, unless additional mills were approved by you, the voter, for more programs or new school buildings.
But a lot of that statewide is going to be determined by what the voters themselves voted, if they voted for school levies or libraries or any kind of levies that where the voters had a voice.
On the flip side, if property values in your area declined, and they did in a dozen rural counties primarily in eastern Montana, then local mills may be increased to collect the same amount of revenue. And finally, there's the question of whether your new appraised value is accurate.
I always tell people when they get their appraisal in the mail, they should ask themselves the following question: would I sell my house for that amount of money?
If the answer is yes, then the appraisal is accurate and legal. If it's lower, you shouldn't complain. If it's more than you think your property is worth, you can protest to the local revenue department office. And one last thing, if your property's value increased more than the county average, you'll likely be paying higher property taxes this coming year. You can go to our website and see the averages for every county. In Helena, I'm Mike Dennison, MTN News.
All right, thanks, Mike. Now, your actual property tax bills do not go out until November.
The shuttered Toys R Us building on Billings West End is becoming a Planet Fitness. A major Planet Fitness franchise owner out of New Jersey is taking his next door to Billings. Dave Leon plans to invest roughly $1 million into the property, according to the permit. Plans to remodel the building inside and out. That building became vacant last summer after the owners of Toys R Us declared bankruptcy and liquidated all 800 stores nationwide. Planet Fitness has 1,800 stores, including locations in Great Falls, Helena, and Missoula.
A Billings Labor Day weekend tradition, the future of Burn the Point Classic Car and Truck Show is now uncertain. This comes as organizer Sylvia Gussick enters her 16th year of putting on the event and is ready to pass the baton. In a phone call this morning, Gussick confirmed this year's event will happen, but next year is unclear. Burn the Point is a fundraiser for the Chase Hawks Memorial Association and includes a parade through downtown Billings, a fun parade, a street dance, and a car show at Metro Park.
Well, the past 2 days have been important training exercises for soldiers with the Montana National Guard as many prepare for deployment later this year.
In the hills of Fort Harrison, west of Helena, dozens of soldiers are taking part in a personal recovery exercise. Now, this exercise based on what soldiers would need to do if a helicopter were to go down in a dangerous area.
After an initial training, soldiers had to make their way through a 1-mile course using the same emergency gear they would have in a crisis. All of this to train and be prepared for the unthinkable.
We're always training for the bad day. In the military, we never assume that everything's going to go real well. But so this is one of those bad day scenarios.
Well, the bottom line is to be able to get out of a sticky situation as safely as we can with as many of us as we can.
Aviation crews must undergo this kind of recovery training every year.
Well, there's more news going on across our state, and here's a look.
I'm Andrea Lutz. We are tracking the biggest stories across the state of Montana, and Bob McGuire has your latest weather. It's all coming up tonight on the MTN 9 o'clock news on the CW.
Still to come on tonight's 5:30 news, as food begins to get faster and easier, it can also lose its nutrition. Find out about a summit looking to bring back some spice to the kitchen.
And later in sports, see why one man is pushing himself to the limits on the longest golf trip of his life.
And in weather, we have severe thunderstorm warnings for Bighorn and Rosebud counties. Ping pong to golf ball size hail. We'll have the update for you coming up in a few minutes.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Green. This is the 5:30 news on Q2, Montana's news leader.